step into a world of imagination where science meets mystery. On this channel, Sci-Fi Stories, you'll experience exciting sci-fi stories about futuristic worlds, space adventures, advanced technology, and unexpected twists. Every story is told in a natural human voice, not AI generated, to give you a more real and engaging storytelling experience. If you love immersive sci-fi tales and powerful storytelling, you're in the right place. Let's start the story.
They came to the Sol system expecting primitives. What they found was something the galaxy had never seen before, something that refused to stop. The Vryn believed in limits. Every species had them. Biological tolerances, psychological breaking points, cultural boundaries that couldn't be crossed. The Vryn had mapped them all across 300 years of galactic expansion. They'd catalogued 62 spacefaring civilizations, each with their own perfectly predictable parameters. The Kreth could withstand 17 gravities but panicked in enclosed spaces. The Solix thrived in radiation that would cook most organics but couldn't handle rapid temperature shifts. The Venturi possessed telepathic networks that made them brilliant strategists but useless when isolated. Every species, every limit, documented. And Commander Thesic adjusted the sensory membrane along his lateral ridge as the fleet dropped out of quantum slip at the edge of the Sol system. 12 Vryn warships materialized in formation, their hulls reflecting starlight like oil on water. Beautiful vessels, efficient, designed within known parameters. Initial scans complete, Commander. The tactical officer's voice thrummed through the bridge's atmospheric gel. 9 planets, 1 habitable. Electromagnetic signatures consistent with pre-quantum civilization. Thesic studied the data streams flowing through the translucent workstation before him. Radio waves, primitive chemical rockets, fission power. The species here called themselves humans, and they were exactly where the galactic progression models predicted they should be. Stage 4 civilization. Maybe early stage 5 if they'd managed controlled fusion. Right on schedule, right within limits. Standard first contact protocol, Thesic said. Chart their population centers. Identify leadership structures. We'll initiate communication in 48 rotations. Commander, the science officer gestured with 3 of her manipulation tendrils. Something anomalous. Thesic felt his tertiary heart skip. Anomalies were rare. Anomalies were interesting. Specify. The humans have established permanent habitation beyond their homeworld. Significant infrastructure on their natural satellite, automated probes throughout their system. She paused. And something else. Multiple vessels operating beyond the orbit of their 8th planet. That made Thesic's membrane ridge flatten. Vessels? They've barely achieved orbit. Confirmed. And primitive propulsion systems. Fusion drives at best. But the science officer's tone carried confusion. The vessels shouldn't be there. The energy expenditure to reach those distances with such limited technology would be irrational. Thesic felt something he hadn't felt in decades of xenological survey work. Curiosity mixed with unease. How irrational. By our models, the humans should still be confined to near-planet operations for another century. The resource investment required to place vessels at such distances. She made the Vryn gesture for mathematical impossibility. It violates optimal expansion protocols. They would need to dedicate catastrophic percentages of their total economic output for minimal scientific return. The bridge fell silent except for the soft pulse of the life support systems. Thesic studied the data. Numbers didn't lie. These humans had thrown ships into the outer darkness of their system using technology that made the endeavor nearly suicidal. They'd burned resources that should have gone into planetary development. They'd risked lives on missions that wouldn't yield meaningful returns for generations. It was inefficient. It was illogical. It was fascinating. Adjust timeline, Thesic said. We initiate contact in 12 rotations. I want full analysis of their space program before we make first approach. The fleet moved deeper into the system, sensors drinking in electromagnetic radiation from a civilization that was busily shouting its existence into the void. The humans seemed unaware that anyone was listening. They broadcast entertainment, communication, navigation signals, all of it unencrypted, unfiltered. Thesic assigned 3 science officers to sort through the data streams. What emerged over the following rotations painted a picture that grew stranger with each revelation. The humans had detonated nuclear weapons on their own homeworld. Hundreds of them. Not in warfare, in tests. They'd poisoned sections of their planet just to see how the weapons worked. They'd sent individuals to their moon using chemical rockets that had less computing power than a Vryn personal data device. The mission survival probability hovered around 60%. They went anyway. They'd built a station in orbit that served no military purpose. It was a research facility, permanently crewed. They maintained it continuously despite the staggering cost. Commander! The lead xenopsychologist approached Thesic's station, her membrane pattern showing distress. I've completed analysis of their cultural data. We have a problem. Explain. The humans have no instinctive limit recognition. She gestured at her workstation where translated human communications scrolled past. Most species develop behavioral governors, psychological mechanisms that prevent catastrophically risky behavior. It's how civilizations survive long enough to reach the stars. Thesic knew this. The Vryn had several such governors. Risk aversion in the presence of offspring. Resource hoarding during scarcity periods. Conflict avoidance when survival probability dropped below 40%. Every species had them. The humans appear to have broken theirs. The xenopsychologist pulled up image after image. Humans climbing vertical rock faces without safety equipment. And humans diving into deep water with only breath-holding capacity. Humans racing vehicles at speeds that would kill them if they crashed. They pursue high-risk, low-reward activities voluntarily, for recreation. That's not possible. Thesic felt his lateral vents flex involuntarily. A species can't survive adolescence without risk governors. They barely did. Their historical data is filled with near-extinction events. Catastrophic wars, ecological collapse, plague. Yet each time, enough survived to rebuild. She made the gesture for profound concern. And they remember. They document their failures extensively, study them, then attempt the same risks again with marginal safety improvements. Thesic stared at the images. A human stood on the peak of a mountain, arms spread, wind tearing at their clothing. The smile on their face transmitted across species barriers. Pure joy. At the top of a frozen wasteland that had killed dozens of other humans who'd tried to reach it. What do they gain from this? Thesic asked. Nothing quantifiable. When asked, they say things like, because it's there, or to see if we can, or why not? The xenopsychologist's membrane rippled with unease. Commander, I don't think we can predict their behavior using standard xenological models. They don't operate within rational parameters. Thesic felt 3 of his hearts accelerate. In 300 years of Vryn expansion, they'd never encountered a species that couldn't be modeled. Even the most aggressive civilizations followed predictable patterns. Territorial disputes had mathematical solutions. Resource conflicts had negotiable outcomes. But a species without instinctive limits? That was dangerous. Maintain surveillance, Thesic ordered. Double the xenopsychology team. I want comprehensive behavioral analysis before we make contact. Over the next 7 rotations, the analysis grew more disturbing. The humans had something they called extreme sports. Voluntary activities with significant injury or death probability. Jumping from aircraft with fabric parachutes. Descending underground into unexplored cave systems. Surfing waves that could crush them against rocks. Millions of humans participated. They called it fun. The humans had sent a probe beyond the edge of their system using a gravity-assist trajectory that required passing within decimals of collision distance around multiple planets. The mission took decades. The probe still functioned, and still transmitted data from the void between stars. They'd built underground accelerators to smash particles together at relativistic speeds just to see what would happen. Some of their own scientists had worried it might create a black hole that would consume their planet. They built it anyway. "Commander?" The tactical officer's membrane had gone pale with alarm. "We have a situation." Thesic moved to the tactical station, his vents cycling rapidly. "Report. One of the human vessels in the outer system has altered course. It's approaching our position." That was impossible. The fleet maintained full stealth protocols. Gravitational dampers, electromagnetic silence, thermal dissipation, they were invisible to anything short of quantum-level sensors, which these primitives absolutely did not possess. "Coincidence," Thesic said, though his tertiary heart was pounding. "Confirm their trajectory." The tactical officer worked in silence for 30 seconds. When she looked up, her membrane showed pure confusion. "Direct intercept course, Commander. Arrival in 42 rotations." "They can't have detected us." "I know, sir, but their vessel is on a course that will bring them within visual range of our position." Thesic felt his concentration membrane ripple. "Visual range? They're not using sensors?" "Their electromagnetic output suggests basic radar and optical telescopes only." "But, Commander..." The tactical officer gestured at the projection. "The vessel is accelerating. Chemical thrust. They're burning fuel at a rate that will leave them with minimal reserve for maneuvering once they reach us." "So they're locked in," Thesic said. "If they've miscalculated, they strand themselves in interstellar space with no recovery option." "Yes, sir." The bridge fell silent. The humans had somehow detected or predicted the fleet's position using primitive technology. Then they'd launched a vessel on what was essentially a one-way trajectory to investigate. Either they had computing capabilities far beyond what their technology suggested, or they were willing to risk death on the possibility that something might be out here. Thesic thought about the human climbing that mountain. The smile on their face. Why not? "Adjust fleet position," Thesic ordered. "Move us 3,000 kilometers spinward." "Sir, that will place us in suboptimal defensive formation." "Do it." The fleet's drives engaged with whispers of redirected gravity. 12 warships slid silently to new positions, opening a gap where they'd been. 42 rotations later, the human vessel arrived exactly where the fleet had been. Thesic watched on the long-range optical sensors as the tiny ship, barely larger than a Vryn shuttle, used its chemical thrusters to slow. No weapons, no shields. Just a metal cylinder with solar panels and antenna arrays, and 2 humans inside. The vessel coasted through empty space where it had expected to find something. It hung there, alone in the dark, fuel reserves depleted. "They gambled," the xenopsychologist said softly. "They detected an anomaly, ran probability calculations, then bet their lives that something was here." "And lost," Thesic said. "Did they?" The xenopsychologist gestured at the human vessel. "Look at their energy signatures. Life support active. Communication arrays broadcasting. They're not panicking, not distressed." Thesic studied the data. She was right. The humans inside that stranded vessel were calm. One of them was eating. "They think they've won," the xenopsychologist said. "They know something is here, something that moved when they approached. To them, this confirms intelligent alien life exists. That's worth dying for. That's insane. By our standards, yes." Thesic felt his decision gel in his primary cortex. These humans were dangerous, but not in the way the Vryn had understood danger. They weren't aggressive or territorial or resource-hungry. They were unpredictable, and they didn't stop. "Prepare a rescue operation," Thesic ordered. "Retrieve the vessel and bring the humans aboard the command ship." "Sir?" The tactical officer's membrane showed shock. "First contact protocols are suspended. We need to understand these beings before we proceed, and leaving them to die violates the Accords." Besides, Thesic admitted to himself as the rescue shuttles launched, he needed to look into the eyes of a species that would gamble death on curiosity. He needed to know what he was dealing with. The rescue took 2 rotations. The human vessel was primitive but ingeniously designed. Every gram of mass accounted for, every system optimized. It was ugly by Vrin standards, all function, no elegance. But Thesic couldn't help admiring the efficiency. When the humans were brought aboard, they came peacefully. No weapons, no hostility, just wonder. The female was small, barely reaching Thesic's mid-thorax. Dark skin, hair bound back, eyes that moved constantly, cataloguing everything. Her companion was taller, lighter-skinned, with facial hair the Vrin found unsettling. They stood in the docking bay, wearing their primitive pressure suits, helmets removed, breathing the atmospheric gel that filled Vrin ships without hesitation. The xenopsychologist had said humans adapted quickly. Thesic approached slowly, spreading his manipulation tendrils in the gesture of peaceful greeting. The translators had been analyzing human language for rotations. Time to see if they worked. "I am Commander Thesic of the Vrin Exploration Fleet," he said, the words emerging in translated human speech. "You are aboard our vessel as guests, and under protection of the Accords." The female human stepped forward. Her lips curved upward. A smile, the Vrin database said. Expression of pleasure or humor. "Commander," she said. Her voice was different than he'd expected, musical almost. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. This is Lieutenant Marcus Webb. And I have about 64 questions, starting with, did you just say Vrin or grin? Because your ship is definitely not grinning, and I need to know if that's a translation issue or..." She stopped because her companion had placed a hand on her shoulder. "What Captain Chen means," Marcus said, his voice deeper, calmer, "is thank you for the rescue. We appreciate the hospitality. And yes, we have questions. Many questions." "Captain?" Thesic's translator stumbled over the rank. "You lead military forces?" "Mission Commander," Sarah corrected. "We're civilian astronauts. This was a science mission. When we detected the gravitational anomaly, your fleet's dampers aren't quite as subtle as you think. By the way, we had to investigate." "Had to?" Thesic felt his membrane ridge rise. "Your vessel had insufficient fuel reserves for a return journey. You knew this." Sarah's smile widened. "Math doesn't lie. But we figured if we were right and you were out here, you'd probably have the technology to get us home. Worst case, we'd have confirmed alien life existed before running out of air. Win-win." Thesic stood very still. His tertiary heart skipped again. "You would have considered dying. A victory?" "Well, yeah." Sarah glanced at Marcus, who nodded. "We're astronauts, Commander. We signed up knowing the risks. Hell, Marcus here has 3 kids back home. I've got 2. But the chance to make first contact with an alien civilization?" She spread her hands. "You don't get that opportunity twice." Thesic thought about the Vrin, or about their careful risk calculations, about the fact that they'd been exploring space for 300 years and had never lost a vessel because they never pushed beyond established limits, about the fact that in 300 years they'd made first contact exactly 12 times, and always on their terms, never the other species. "Your offspring," Thesic said slowly. "They supported this decision?" Marcus laughed. Actual laughter. The sound filled the docking bay. "My oldest daughter, she's 10, told me if I didn't go check out the aliens, she'd never forgive me. She wants to be an astronaut too, you see. Wants to go to Mars. Mars is hostile to human life." "Sure is." Marcus's smile matched Sarah's. "But it's there. So somebody's going to go. Might as well be my kid." Thesic felt something shift in his understanding. These humans didn't just lack limits. They taught their offspring to exceed limits. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the interior corridors. "We should discuss your presence here, and..." He paused. "I believe my superiors will want to meet you." As they walked through the ship, Sarah kept up a constant stream of questions. How did the atmospheric gel work? What powered the drives? How did they navigate? Were there other species? What did they eat? Could she see the engine room? Marcus was quieter, but his eyes missed nothing. Thesic watched him catalogue exits, assess structural integrity, note defensive positions. Military mind, even in a civilian. They reached the observation deck, and Thesic gestured at the transparent wall. Earth hung in the distance, blue and white, and achingly fragile. "Beautiful," Sarah breathed. "This is your home," Thesic said. "You risked never seeing it again." "Risk is relative, Commander." Sarah moved closer to the wall, her hand touching the surface. "Humans have always gone beyond the horizon. Sometimes we don't come back. But if nobody risks the journey, we stay in one place forever. And that would be bad?" Sarah turned to look at him, and Thesic saw something in her eyes that his xenological training hadn't prepared him for. Pity. She pitied him. "Commander," she said gently, "has your species ever done something just to see if you could? Not because it was efficient or optimal or safe. Just because the possibility existed and you couldn't stand not knowing?" Thesic thought about 300 years of careful expansion. Mapped limits. Calculated risks. "No," he admitted. Sarah's smile turned sad. "Then you've never really lived." The words sat in Thesic's consciousness like a stone in water, sending ripples through everything he thought he understood about civilization and progress and survival. These humans were dangerous, not because they had weapons or hostile intent, but because they didn't understand the concept of impossible. And Thesic was beginning to suspect that might be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The Vryn High Council convened in quantum space. 12 consciousness matrices linked across light years, debating the fate of a species they didn't understand. Thesic presented his findings through neural upload. Every interaction, every data point, every moment that had made his tertiary heart skip with something that felt uncomfortably like fear. Elder Cassith absorbed the data stream, and her consciousness rippling through the information like water through sand. When she finally spoke, her thoughts carried the weight of 400 years of life. These humans are aberrant, not dangerous, not hostile. Aberrant. They function outside established xenological parameters, another elder transmitted. This presents significant complications for integration protocols. Thesic felt the Council's attention focus on him like a physical pressure. "You recommend?" He'd spent 3 rotations thinking about this, watching Sarah and Marcus adapt to life aboard the ship with disturbing ease, watching them treat impossible situations as interesting problems. "I recommend continued observation," Thesic transmitted. "We don't understand them yet. And I believe we should." "Why?" Cassith's thought carried genuine curiosity. "They are stage 4, possibly early 5. We have protocols for civilizations at this level. Establish trade, monitor development, intervene if they approach destructive thresholds." "Because they don't have thresholds," Thesic sent back. "Or if they do, they haven't found them yet. And that means our models don't work." Silence rippled through the quantum link. "Explain," Cassith commanded. Thesic pulled up the data he'd compiled. Human history was a litany of impossible achievements. Crossing oceans in wooden boats, harnessing electricity, splitting atoms, reaching their moon with computers less powerful than Vryn children's toys. Every time they should have stopped, they didn't. Thesic transmitted. Every time probability said they would fail, they succeeded through sheer refusal to accept failure. They lose thousands of individuals in the attempt. They destroy resources. They make catastrophically inefficient choices. Then they are a self-limiting civilization, an elder noted. They will exhaust themselves before reaching stage 6. "That's what we thought about the Kreth," another elder countered. They exceeded predictions. The Kreth expanded 30% beyond models. These humans? Thesic sent the projections his science team had compiled. If they maintain current trajectory, they'll exceed our models by 300% within 2 centuries. The quantum space fell silent. 300% meant humans everywhere, human colonies, human ships, human influence spreading through sectors the Vryn had carefully maintained for generations. "This is speculation," Cassith transmitted. But her thought carried uncertainty. "It's mathematics," Thesic replied. "Extrapolated from observed behavior. They don't optimize. They don't calculate acceptable losses. They just go. And somehow, enough of them survive to keep going. Then we limit them," an elder suggested. "Standard containment protocols. Restrict their expansion. Monitor their development." Thesic thought about Sarah touching the observation deck wall, the pity in her eyes. "I don't think we can contain them," he transmitted. "Not without direct conflict. And I don't think we want that. Are you suggesting they represent a military threat? I'm suggesting they represent something we've never encountered. A civilization that sees limits as suggestions rather than boundaries. And if we try to impose boundaries..." He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. The Council had studied human history. They'd seen what happened when humans encountered boundaries they didn't accept. "Continue observation," Cassith finally transmitted. "But I want contingencies prepared. If these humans prove dangerous..." "They're not dangerous," Thesic interrupted, then immediately regretted the breach in protocol. "They're unpredictable. There's a difference. Is there?" Cassith's thought carried the weight of centuries. To a species like ours, unpredictability is danger. The Council dissolved, leaving Thesic alone in quantum space with the uncomfortable realization that the Elder was right. The Vryn survived through prediction, through understanding parameters and operating within them. They'd built an empire on certainty, and humans were uncertainty incarnate. Back aboard the command ship, Thesic found Sarah in the observation deck. Again, since she spent hours there, watching her homeworld rotate beneath them, occasionally taking notes on a primitive data pad. "Commander," she didn't turn around. "Your life support system is fascinating. The atmospheric gel, it's not just breathing medium, is it? It's nutrient transport, temperature regulation, radiation shielding, all in one." "Correct." Thesic moved to stand beside her. "We developed it 4 centuries ago. It revolutionized our space expansion capabilities." 4 centuries? Sarah finally looked at him. "So you've been spacefaring for, what, 600 years? 7? "Approximately 800 by your calendar." Sarah nodded slowly. "We've been in space for about 70. We reached our moon 57 years ago." She paused. "You've had 800 years, and you've only found 62 other civilizations?" The question stung more than it should have. "The galaxy is vast, Dr. Chen, and we are thorough in our surveys." "Thorough." Sarah smiled that sad smile again. "Commander, humanity's been broadcasting radio waves for 130 years. We've been screaming into the void, hoping someone would hear us. You've had 8 centuries of advanced technology, and you found us because we almost bumped into your invisible fleet." Thesic felt his membrane ridge flatten. "We maintain careful expansion protocols. You play it safe." Sarah turned back to the window. "I'm not criticizing. It's kept you alive. But Commander, in the 70 years we've been in space, we've sent probes to every planet in our system. We've landed robots on our moon, Mars, Venus, as a comet, an asteroid. We've crashed a probe into Saturn's moon just to see what the ice was made of. We've sent 5 probes beyond the edge of our system into interstellar space, with primitive technology that barely functions. Yeah, with primitive technology that barely functions." She looked at him again, and this time her eyes held something fierce. "Because we couldn't stand not knowing. Because the possibility existed, and we had to try. You know what we call that? Reckless. Human." Thesic stood in silence. The observation deck's atmospheric gel carried the faint hum of the ship's systems, a sound like breathing. "Your species fascinates and terrifies us in equal measure," Thesic admitted finally. "We don't know how to predict you." "Good." Sarah's smile turned genuine. "Predictability is boring. And Commander, you should know. We don't try to be unpredictable. We just refuse to let anyone else tell us what we can't do, including ourselves." Before Thesic could respond, the ship's alert system pulsed through the gel. "Emergency frequency. Priority Alpha." "Command at a bridge," the tactical officer transmitted. "We have a situation." Thesic moved fast, his manipulation tendrils finding purchase in the gel as he pulled himself through the corridors. Sarah followed. He hadn't invited her, but she came anyway, Marcus materializing from somewhere to join them. Unpredictable. The bridge was controlled chaos. Officers at every station, membrane patterns showing stress. "Report," Thesic commanded. "Krell warships, Commander. 3 of them. I just dropped out of quantum slip at the inner system boundary." The tactical officer's voice carried barely controlled panic. "They're broadcasting territorial claims, demanding we withdraw immediately." Thesic felt his tertiary heart stop. The Krell. Of all the species in the Vrin's extensive database, the Krell were the most aggressive. Stage 6 civilization, advanced weapons, a culture built on conquest and expansion. They'd never encountered Krell ships in this sector before. They're claiming Sol system? Thesic moved to the tactical display, his consciousness extending into the data streams. On what basis? Right of discovery. They say they identified this system 15 cycles ago, marked it for future colonization. The tactical officer pulled up communication logs. "They're giving us 6 rotations to depart." After that, she didn't need to finish. "After that, the Krell would attack." "We have superior numbers," the weapons officer noted. 12 vessels to 3. "If we engage..." "We don't engage," Thesic cut him off. "The Accords forbid military action in systems with indigenous intelligent life." "The Krell don't follow the Accords," Sarah said quietly. Every Vrin on the bridge turned to look at her. She stood near the tactical display, Marcus beside her, both of them studying the data with expressions Thesic couldn't quite read. "You understand the situation?" Thesic asked. 3 warships want you gone so they can claim our system." Sarah's voice was calm. Too calm. "Which probably means they want our planet. Which means they want to remove or enslave the 7 billion humans currently living there. Colonization protocols vary by species." "Commander," Sarah's eyes locked onto his. "Will the Krell kill us or not?" Thesic's membrane went still. Their colonization protocols typically involve population reduction to manageable levels. How many would survive? Perhaps 5%? As labor force. Sarah nodded once. Marcus's hand found hers. They stood together, these 2 small humans, facing down a threat that would kill their entire species. And they weren't panicking. "So you'll fight them," Sarah said. "We cannot. The Accords..." "The Accords are your rules, not theirs." Sarah moved closer to the tactical display, her eyes scanning the Krell ship positions. "They don't care about your treaties. They care about what they can take." "We are not a military force," Thesic said, but even as he spoke, he knew how hollow it sounded. "We are explorers, scientists, diplomats. You're about to be extinct if you don't fight." "The humans would be extinct," Thesic corrected. "We would simply withdraw." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Sarah stared at him. Not with anger, not with fear, with disappointment. "You'd leave us," she said softly. "You'd abandon 7 billion people to genocide because your rules say you can't fight. Dr. Chen, you don't understand the complexities." "I understand perfectly." Sarah's voice had gone quiet. "Dangerous. You've spent 800 years playing it safe, following rules, staying within limits. And now those limits mean you'll stand by while an entire civilization dies. We will file formal protests. The council will convene. Sanctions will be discussed. By the time you finish talking, my species will be dead." Thesic felt shame wash through him like acid. She was right. The Vrin would protest. The council would debate. Committees would form, and the humans would die. Because the Vrin operated within limits, and those limits said, "Don't fight unless you have to." Except the Vrin never had to. They could always withdraw, always find another system, another opportunity. They had time. The humans didn't. "I'm sorry," Thesic said, and meant it. But we cannot risk our fleet on... On what? Sarah stepped closer. On a primitive civilization you found by accident? On beings too stupid to know when they're beaten? Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Or are you just too scared to find out what happens when you actually push beyond your precious limits? The bridge went silent. No species spoke to a Vryn commander like that. Especially not a Stage 4 primitive who existed entirely at the Vryn's mercy. But Sarah Chen wasn't any species Thesic had encountered, and she sure as hell wasn't showing any mercy. Marcus, Sarah said, not taking her eyes off Thesic. How long would it take to retrofit our shuttle with weapons? Sarah, how long? Marcus sighed. Chen, our shuttle has barely enough fuel to get back to Earth orbit. We've got no weapons, no shields, no... How long to retrofit? Marcus looked at Thesic, then at his partner. Something passed between them. Some unspoken understanding. 12 hours if we cannibalize the life support? 18 if we want to survive the attempt. We'll take 12. Sarah turned to Thesic. Commander, you're going to let us go. You're going to give us access to whatever weapons systems you can spare. And we're going to do what you apparently can't. That's suicide, Thesic said flatly. Probably. Sarah's smile was nothing like her earlier expressions. This one had teeth. But see, Commander, here's where humans are different. You see a situation where fighting means probable death, so you don't fight. We see the same situation and think, well, might as well go down swinging. 1 shuttle against 3 warships, we'll lose. Yeah, we know. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. But maybe we'll take one of them with us. Maybe we'll buy Earth enough time to evacuate some cities. Maybe we'll inspire some other human with a better plan. She paused. Or maybe we'll just die knowing we tried, which is better than living knowing we hid. Thesic stared at these 2 humans, these impossible, illogical beings who were proposing to attack a vastly superior force with essentially no chance of success. And they were serious. You would do this, Thesic said slowly, knowing you will fail. We would do this knowing we might fail, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. You've already decided failure is certain. We're willing to find out. That's not courage, that's delusion. Call it what you want, Commander. Sarah was already moving toward the exit. Just stay out of our way. They left, 2 humans, walking out of a Vryn command bridge like they owned it, like they hadn't just committed suicide. Then Thesic stood frozen, his consciousness spinning through probability matrices. Every calculation said the same thing. The humans would die. Quickly, pointlessly. And yet... Commander? The tactical officer's voice pulled him back. What are your orders? Thesic looked at his crew, saw the uncertainty in their membrane patterns, saw the shame that mirrored his own. They were Vryn. They operated within limits. They followed protocols. They survived. But survival suddenly felt like a hollow achievement when it meant abandoning billions to death because the rules said fighting back was too risky. How long until the Krell reach firing range of Earth? Thesic asked quietly. 48 rotations, Commander. 48 rotations, 2 human days. 2 days to decide if the Vryn would remain within their limits, or if they'd finally learn what lay beyond them. Thesic found Sarah and Marcus in the shuttle bay 6 rotations later. They'd somehow convinced 3 Vryn engineers to help them, convinced, bribed, or simply worn down through sheer persistence. The shuttle was barely recognizable. Vryn energy weapons had been crudely welded to the hull. Shielding panels cannibalized from escape pods. A reactor that had no business being in something that size. It looked like a flying disaster. Sarah was underneath it, tools in hand, her face smeared with lubricant. Dr. Chen, Thesic called out. She rolled out from under the shuttle, squinted up at him. Commander, come to arrest us? No. Thesic moved closer. I've come to tell you that you're insane. Already knew that. She stood, wiping her hands on her suit. Anything else? Yes. Thesic pulled up a datapad. I've compiled tactical information on Krell ship designs. Weaknesses, shield frequencies, optimal attack vectors. Sarah took the pad slowly, looked at it, looked at Thesic. You're helping us? I'm providing information to a fellow sentient being, Thesic said carefully. What you do with that information is your choice. Commander, the Vryn will not engage the Krell. The Accords forbid it. Our protocols forbid it. Every rational analysis says engaging would be catastrophically risky. Thesic paused. But perhaps we have operated within our limits for too long. Perhaps it is time we learned what lies beyond them. Sarah's eyes widened. You're going to fight. I didn't say that. But I said we will not engage. That is true. We will not fire first. We will not violate the Accords. Thesic felt his membrane ridge ripple with something that might have been a smile. However, if a small human shuttle were to attack 3 Krell warships, and those warships returned fire, and in the chaos of battle some of that return fire happened to strike nearby Vryn vessels, who then defended themselves in accordance with self-preservation protocols. He trailed off meaningfully. Sarah stared at him. Then she started laughing. Full body, doubled over, tears streaming laughter. You magnificent bureaucratic loophole-finding son of a... She stopped herself. Commander, that's the most beautifully stupid plan I've ever heard. It's not a plan. It's simply information. And a hypothetical scenario. Right, hypothetical. Sarah was grinning now. And if we happened to transmit our attack vector to you ahead of time, and you happened to position your ships in places where Krell return fire would threaten you, we would of course be forced to respond to that threat. Of course. They stood there, human and Vryn, separated by 1 billion years of evolutionary history and united by a single insane idea. You could die, Sarah said quietly. All of you. This violates everything your species believes about acceptable risk. Yes, Thesic agreed. It does. So why? Thesic thought about 800 years of careful expansion, about the Elders' words, unpredictability is danger, about limits and safety and survival, about a human touching a wall and pitying him. Because, Thesic said slowly, you were right. We've never really lived. We've survived. Calculated, optimized. But we've never stood at the edge of the impossible and jumped. His membrane rippled. Perhaps it's time we did. Sarah's smile turned soft. Welcome to being human, Commander. I'm not. You're about to do something catastrophically stupid because it's the right thing to do. Trust me, that's the most human thing there is. Marcus emerged from inside the shuttle, covered in more lubricant than Sarah. We're ready, or as ready as we're going to get. He looked at Thesic. Sir, if we're doing this, we need to move. The Krell are advancing faster than predicted. Thesic checked his internal chronometer. 42 rotations now. The Krell had accelerated. I need to brief my fleet. He turned to go, then stopped. Dr. Chen. Lieutenant Webb. Commander. For what it's worth, I believe your species has extraordinary potential. I hope you survive to achieve it. We will, Sarah said with absolute certainty. We always do. That's kind of our thing. As Thesic moved through the corridors back to the bridge, he felt his tertiary heart racing. Fear, exhilaration. The unfamiliar sensation of standing on the edge of something unknown. For the first time in 800 years of Vryn expansion, they were about to exceed their limits. And Thesic couldn't tell if that made him terrified or alive. Maybe, he thought, it made him both. Maybe that was the point. The Vryn fleet hung in formation between the Krell warships and Earth. 12 vessels arranged in what appeared to be a standard defensive posture. It wasn't. Thesic had positioned each ship along precise vectors calculated to appear accidental, while actually creating a 3-dimensional kill zone. If, when, the Krell fired, their weapons would pass within meters of Vryn hulls, close enough to trigger legitimate self-defense protocols, close enough to make it look like the Krell fired first. All ships report ready, Commander, the tactical officer said. Her membrane pattern showed stress, but also something else. Excitement, maybe? Or terror? Thesic couldn't quite tell. Hell, he felt the same way. "The Krell are hailing us," communications reported. On screen, the bridge's display materialized into a three-dimensional representation of a Krell commander. Their species was bipedal like humans, but there the similarity ended. Chitinous armor covered their body like overlapping plates. 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern. Mandibles that clicked when they spoke. "Vrin vessel." The Krell commander's voice came through, translated. You were given time to withdraw. That time has expired. "We are conducting scientific research," Thesic replied, keeping his voice neutral. "We have claimed no territory. We threaten no one. The system is ours. Leave or be removed. We will depart once our research is complete. Approximately 20 rotations." The Krell commander's mandibles spread wide, their equivalent of a laugh. "You have 6. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." The connection severed. Thesic looked at his tactical officer. 6 rotations until they open fire." "Confirmed, Commander. They're charging weapons now." 6 rotations. Less than 3 hours by human measure. 3 hours until the Vrin either withdrew as they always had, or stood and fought for the first time in 8 centuries. "Shuttle Alpha is requesting launch clearance," the docking officer reported. "Alpha, the human shuttle. Sarah and Marcus about to throw themselves at 3 warships in a vessel held together with determination and salvaged parts." "Clearance granted," Thesic said. "Transmit tactical updates to their systems. Full battle network access." The bridge fell silent. Battle network access meant the humans would have the same combat information as Vrin warships. Real-time targeting data, shield frequencies, weapon status. It was a violation of 17 security protocols. Thesic didn't care. "Commander," the tactical officer said quietly, "we're really doing this." "Yes." Thesic watched the shuttle's icon appear on the tactical display. "Yes, we are." Inside Shuttle Alpha, as Sarah ran through final pre-flight checks while Marcus handled navigation. The cockpit was cramped even by human standards, made worse by the jury-rigged weapons systems they'd crammed into every available space. "Reactor stable," Sarah called out. "Weapons charged to 60%. Shields are, well, they're there. I wouldn't say they're good, but they exist." "That's comforting," Marcus muttered. He studied the tactical display Thesic had linked them to. 3 Krell warships hung in space like predators. Each one massed 10 times what the entire Vrin fleet displaced. "Sarah, those things are enormous." "Yep. And our weapons are basically Vrin hand-me-downs that we don't really know how to use." "Also, yep. And we have maybe 30 minutes of combat capability before our reactor melts down, or we run out of ammunition, or both." "You're really selling this plan, Marcus." He turned to look at her. "I just want to make sure we're clear on the situation." Sarah met his eyes. 10 years they'd worked together. 5 missions. Countless hours in simulators, debriefs, training exercises. She knew his face better than her own husband's at this point. She saw no fear there, just determination and trust. "We're clear," Sarah said softly. "This is suicide with a side of stupidity." "Okay." Marcus turned back to his console. "Just checking." They launched in silence, and the shuttle's primitive chemical thrusters pushing them away from the Vrin ship. Through the viewport, Earth hung below them, beautiful and fragile, and completely unaware that 3 alien warships were about to decide its fate. "Control, this is Alpha," Sarah transmitted. "We're clear and beginning approach vector." "Copy, Alpha." Thesic's voice came through, translated but clear. "May your journey find safe harbor." "That's a Vrin blessing, isn't it?" Sarah asked. "For travelers departing on dangerous voyages, it seemed appropriate." "Thanks, Commander." Sarah powered up the weapons systems, watching indicators climb toward operational status. "See you on the other side." "Or not at all," Marcus added. Statistically speaking." The shuttle accelerated toward the Krell warships, using every gram of thrust the overtaxed reactor could provide. Sarah had plotted their course to look aggressive. Direct intercept, no evasive maneuvering, maximum speed. Because the entire plan hinged on the Krell thinking they were dangerous enough to shoot at. Picking up active targeting sensors, Marcus reported. All 3 Krell ships are tracking us. Good. Let them look. Sarah armed the forward weapons. How long until we're in range? 8 minutes at current velocity. 8 minutes. Sarah spent them running calculations, checking systems, and trying not to think about her kids. Emma and Tyler, 8 and 6. Too young to really understand where Mom was or why she might not come home, but old enough to remember her. She hoped. Just 6 minutes, Marcus said. Sarah, they're hailing us. Ignore it. They're demanding we break off. Still ignoring. Now they're threatening to fire. Marcus. Yeah? If they fire on us, that means the plan is working. He laughed. Short bark of sound that was more stress relief than humor. Right, getting shot at is success. I'll remember that for the after-action report. There won't be an after-action report if we're dead. Glass half full. I like it. 4 minutes. 3. The Krell warships grew from points of light to visible objects. Massive, heavily armed. Their hulls bristled with weapons that could vaporize the shuttle in milliseconds. Sarah felt her hands steady on the controls. This was it. This was the moment where they either pulled off the most audacious bluff in human history or died in a brief flash of superheated plasma. She was okay with either outcome. 2 minutes to weapons range, Marcus said. His voice had gone calm. Mission voice. The one he used when things were completely out of control and he needed to sound like they weren't. Krell ships are spreading formation. They're taking us seriously. Or they're confused why 2 humans in a tin can are charging 3 battleships. Could be both. 1 minute. Sarah's finger hovered over the firing control. The weapons Thesic's engineers had mounted wouldn't do much damage to those ships, but they'd sting. They'd be annoying. They'd justify retaliation. Range in 30 seconds, Marcus counted down. 20. 15. The tactical display lit up with warnings. All 3 Krell ships had locked weapons. Multiple targeting solutions. Enough firepower to crack a moon. All aimed at one small shuttle. 10 seconds. Sarah took a breath. Thought about Emma's laugh. Tyler's obsession with dinosaurs. Her husband's terrible jokes. Thought about 7 billion people who had no idea 2 astronauts were about to save or doom them. 5, 4, 3. For humanity, Sarah whispered. 2, 1. Mark. She fired. The shuttle's weapons discharged in a stuttering barrage. Energy bolts crossing the distance to the nearest Krell warship in seconds. They struck the shields, flared bright, and dissipated. Barely scratched the paint. But they'd fired. They'd drawn first blood. For 3 eternal seconds, nothing happened. The Krell ships hung there, or probably confused as hell that something so small had attacked something so large. Then they returned fire. Every weapon, every system. Enough destructive power to glass a continent. All aimed at Shuttle Alpha. Evasive! Sarah threw the shuttle into a roll that pressed them into their seats. The world became a kaleidoscope of stars and weapon trails and near misses that shook the ship. They're really trying to kill us, Marcus shouted over alarms. That's the point. Plasma bolts streaked past. One clipped their starboard shield, overloading it instantly. The shuttle spun, reactor screaming, hull temperature climbing into the red. And behind them, exactly as planned, the Krell weapons fire passed within meters of the Vryn fleet. Thesic had positioned his ships perfectly. All vessels. Evasive maneuvers. The Vryn commander's voice cut through their comms. We are under fire. Return fire authorized. The Vryn fleet erupted into action. 12 ships that had never fired weapons in combat opened up with everything they had. Energy weapons. Kinetic penetrators. Missile systems that should have been decommissioned decades ago, but turned out to still work just fine. The Krell ships, focused on the annoying shuttle, suddenly found themselves bracketed by a fleet that wasn't supposed to fight. The lead Krell warship took 3 direct hits to its port shield generator. The shields flickered, failed. The second Krell ship broke formation, trying to engage the Vryn fleet while still tracking the shuttle. The third ship just opened fire on everything, apparently deciding that if violence wasn't solving the problem, and they weren't using enough violence, space became chaos. Sarah fought the controls as the shuttle bucked and twisted through the crossfire. Every system was redlined. The reactor was cooking itself. The weapons were exhausted. They'd done their job. "Marcus, plot escape vector to Earth. We need to get out of here before..." The shuttle lurched. Alarms cascaded. Sarah looked at the damage readout and felt her stomach drop. Reactor containment failing. Hull breach in 3 sections. Maneuvering thrusters offline. They were dead in space. "Shit," Marcus said quietly. "Yeah." Through the viewport, the battle raged. The Vryn were fighting like they'd been born to it, despite 8 centuries of peace. They moved in formation, covered each other, exploited weaknesses in the Krell shields with precision that suggested their tactical computers were learning in real time. The Krell ships were taking damage, real damage. One was venting atmosphere. Another had lost primary weapons. The third was maneuvering erratically, shields flickering. The Vryn were winning. Holy hell, the Vryn were actually winning. "Sarah," Marcus said, "we're venting oxygen. Life support's gone. We've got maybe 10 minutes of air in our suits." She looked at the tactical display. The battle would be over in 5. They just needed to last 5 more minutes. "We'll make it," Sarah said. "You always say that." "And we always make it. Until we don't." Sarah reached over and grabbed his hand. "Marcus, we did it. We saved them. 7 billion people get to live because we were stupid enough to charge 3 warships in a garbage truck with delusions of adequacy." He laughed. Actual laughter. "That's going in the official report. If we live. When we live." "When we live," he agreed. They sat there, holding hands, watching the battle through their dying shuttle's viewport as oxygen slowly leaked into space. 5 minutes, Sarah thought. Just 5 more minutes. She'd survived, longer odds. Thesic watched the battle unfold with a mixture of terror and exhilaration he'd never experienced before. His weapons officer called out targets. His tactical officer coordinated fleet movements. His shields officer managed power distribution with the efficiency of someone who'd been in combat their whole life. They'd never fought before. They were magnificent. "Lead Krell ship has lost shields," weapons reported. "Targeting their primary reactor. Fire!" The Vryn fleet concentrated fire on a single point. Energy weapons converged on the exposed reactor housing. The Krell ship's hull glowed white-hot. Then it exploded. Not a small explosion. Not a controlled failure. The entire ship detonated in a fireball that lit up the tactical display like a second sun. Debris scattered in all directions. The shockwave caught the second Krell warship, already damaged, and tore through its weakened shields. That ship began breaking apart, structural integrity compromised beyond recovery. The third Krell warship suddenly decided survival was more important than conquest. It broke off, shields buckling, engines screaming as it accelerated away from the fight. The Vryn fleet let it go. "Ceasefire," Thesic ordered. "Damage report. Minor hull breaches on 3 vessels. Shield generators damaged on 5. No casualties." The tactical officer's membrane showed pure shock. "Commander, we won." "We won," Thesic repeated numbly. They'd won. The Vryn, who hadn't fought in 800 years, had just destroyed 2 Krell warships and chased off a third. Because 2 humans in a suicide shuttle had given them an excuse to fight. "Sir!" Communications officer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Shuttle Alpha is broadcasting emergency signals. Life support failure. They're venting atmosphere." Thesic's tertiary heart stuttered. "Dispatch rescue immediately. I want them aboard in 5 minutes." "They're in the middle of the debris field." "I said 5 minutes." The bridge snapped into action. Rescue shuttles launched. Earth's medical teams mobilized. Thesic watched the tactical display as two small Vrin vessels navigated through the wreckage toward the drifting human shuttle. 3 minutes. 4. At minute 4 and 30 seconds, the rescue shuttle made contact. At minute 4 and 45 seconds, they reported successful boarding. At minute 5 exactly, they confirmed both humans were alive. Thesic felt something release in his thorax. Relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief that these two insane, impossible humans had survived. "Bring them to medical," Thesic ordered. "And someone get me damage assessments on all ships. The Council is going to want a full report." The tactical officer approached. "Commander, what do we tell them? The Council, I mean. We just violated the Accords. We engaged in military action in a Stage 4 system. We collaborated with primitives against a fellow spacefaring civilization." Thesic thought about 800 years of limits, about playing it safe, about survival through caution, about a human touching a wall and pitying him because his species had never really lived. "We tell them the truth," Thesic said quietly. "We tell them the humans were about to be exterminated. We tell them we couldn't stand by and watch. We tell them—" He paused. "We tell them it was worth it. They'll recall us, strip your command, possibly charge us with treaty violations." "Probably," Thesic agreed, "but we'll still have done the right thing." The tactical officer's membrane rippled. It might have been a smile. "Worth it," she said. "Worth it," Thesic confirmed. Sarah woke up in what she first thought was a waterbed, and then realized was a medical gel suspension unit. Her body felt strange, weightless, tingling. Alive. She was alive. "Marcus?" Her voice came out weak. "Here." His voice came from nearby. "Still alive, against all probability. Told you we'd make it. You're insufferable when you're right." Sarah tried to move and found she couldn't. The medical gel held her in place. "Commander Thesic?" "Present." The Vrin commander appeared in her field of vision, his membrane pattern doing something that might have been concern. "You are recovering, both of you. The medical team says you will make full recovery within 3 rotations." "We made it," Sarah said. "We actually made it." "You did more than that." Thesic's voice carried something she hadn't heard before. Respect. "You saved your world. And you taught us something we'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible, even when every rational calculation says to run." He paused. "Especially then." Sarah felt tears on her face, relief, exhaustion, the weight of 7 billion lives that almost weren't. "The Krell?" she asked. "Destroyed or fled? They will not return to this system." "And your people?" Thesic's membrane rippled in that not-quite smile. "Are having a very interesting conversation about limits, and whether we should continue to operate within them." "Welcome to being human," Sarah whispered. "Indeed." Thesic turned to go, then stopped. "Dr. Chen, your species will be contacted officially by the Council. Diplomatic relations will be established, trade agreements negotiated, or Earth will be invited to join the galactic community as a Stage 5 civilization." That's incredible." "Yes." Thesic's membrane went still. "Though I suspect we are not doing you a favor. The galaxy is about to learn what we learned today." "What's that?" "That humans don't understand the concept of impossible, and that makes you the most dangerous and extraordinary species we've ever encountered." Sarah smiled. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet," Thesic admitted. "Ask me in a few centuries. If your species hasn't either saved the galaxy or burned it down by then." He left. Sarah lay in the medical gel, feeling her body heal, thinking about impossible odds and stupid plans, and 2 astronauts in a garbage truck who'd somehow saved the world. "Marcus," she called out. "Yeah? We're going to be so famous. Or court-martialed. Could go either way." "Worth it." "Worth it," he agreed. Sarah closed her eyes and let the medical gel work. Outside, Earth turned beneath them, oblivious to how close it had come to extinction. But it was safe now. They were all safe. Because 2 humans had refused to accept limits. And 12 Vryn ships had learned to do the same. Not bad for a day's work. 3 months later, the Vryn Council convened in person for the first time in 2 centuries. Physical presence, real space. No quantum links or consciousness uploads. They needed to look each other in the membrane when they made this decision. Thesic stood before them in the council chamber, a vast spherical room filled with atmospheric gel and the weight of 800 years of history. The 23 elders floated in their suspension fields, arranged in a sphere around him. He'd known this day was coming, known it from the moment he'd ordered his fleet to fire. Commander Thesic. Elder Cassith spoke first. She was oldest, most traditional, most likely to call for his execution. You stand accused of violating the Accords, of engaging in military action within an indigenous system, of collaborating with a Stage 4 civilization in combat operations. She paused. How do you plead? Guilty on all counts, Thesic said simply. Silence rippled through the council. You don't deny your actions? Another elder asked. No, I violated established protocols. I broke treaties that have maintained galactic peace for centuries, or I risked my entire fleet on a strategy proposed by primitives who barely understand quantum physics. Thesic felt his membrane steady. And I would do it again. You would. Cassith's voice carried something between fury and fascination. Explain. Because the Accords are wrong. The chamber erupted. Elders gestured frantically. Membrane patterns showed shock, outrage, confusion. In 800 years of Vryn history, no one had called the Accords wrong. The Accords were survival. The Accords were peace. The Accords were how the Vryn had built an empire without war. Cassith raised a manipulation tendril for silence. The chamber stilled. That is an extraordinary claim, Commander. I have extraordinary evidence. Thesic pulled up data streams, projecting them into the GL. Battle recordings, tactical analysis, communication logs. The Krell violated the Accords first. They claimed a system with indigenous intelligent life. They prepared to commit genocide. And our response, according to protocol, was to file complaints and withdraw. That is the purpose of the Accords, to prevent military conflict. To prevent us from engaging in military conflict, Thesic corrected. The Accords protect us. They don't protect anyone else. And when faced with a species being exterminated, we were prepared to stand by and watch because our rules said fighting back was too dangerous. It was dangerous, an elder argued. You could have lost your entire fleet. We could have. We didn't. And 7 billion humans are alive because we chose to act. You chose to violate 8 centuries of carefully maintained peace. I chose to defend innocence from genocide. Thesic's voice carried through the gel like a physical force. And if that violates the Accords, then perhaps the Accords need to be reconsidered. The chamber fell silent. Elder Cassith studied him with all 4 of her primary eyes. You've changed, Commander. 3 months ago, you were one of our most reliable officers. Now you sound like a human, Thesic finished. Yes, they have that effect. Is that meant to be reassuring? No, it's meant to be honest. Thesic pulled up more data. Human history. Achievement records. Cultural analysis. The humans don't understand limits the way we do. They see barriers as challenges, impossibility as invitation. And they've achieved more in 70 years of spaceflight than we have in 800. Because they're reckless. Because they're not afraid to fail. Thesic gestured at the data. We've encountered 62 civilizations in 800 years. The humans have been broadcasting their presence for a century and a half. How did we find them? By accident. Because they almost crashed into our fleet while investigating an anomaly their primitive sensors barely detected. He paused. Let that sink in. We've been so cautious, so careful, so bound by our protocols that we've stopped exploring. We survey, we catalogue, we maintain, but we don't discover. The humans do, because they're willing to risk everything to see what's beyond the next horizon. And that's killed millions of them, another elder noted. Their history is littered with failed expeditions, disasters, catastrophes. Yes, Thesic agreed, and they document every failure, study it, learn from it, then try again with better preparation. He pulled up a specific record. Did you know the humans sent 5 separate missions to their moon before one succeeded? 5 failures, 5 learning experiences, and on the 6th attempt, they walked on another world. We would have stopped after the first failure, reassessed, recalculated. Exactly. Thesic's membrane rippled with something that might have been frustration. We would have stopped. The humans didn't. They kept going until they succeeded, and now they're talking about colonizing Mars, then the moons of Jupiter, then interstellar space. Within 2 centuries, there will be humans everywhere in this galaxy. That's speculation. That's mathematics. Thesic projected growth models. If humans maintain current expansion rates, accounting for technological advancement and their complete disregard for acceptable risk levels, they will establish permanent presence in 50 systems within 200 years, 100 systems within 300. They won't ask permission, won't wait for approval. They'll just go. The chamber processed this in silence. You're saying, Cassith said slowly, that humans represent an existential threat to galactic order. No. Thesic pulled up different data. Battle recordings. The moment his fleet had fired. The Krell ships exploding. I'm saying humans represent an existential opportunity. They fight when threatened. They defend the defenseless. They take catastrophic risks for minimal gains because the possibility exists and they can't stand not knowing. He gestured at the recordings. We've spent 8 centuries avoiding conflict, building protocols to prevent war, and in 3 months of knowing humans, I've learned something we forgot. What? That sometimes peace requires the willingness to fight. That neutrality in the face of genocide is its own form of evil. That limits exist to be tested, not worshipped. Thesic felt his tertiary heart racing. This was it. The moment that would either change Vryn culture or see him executed for heresy. The Accords say we don't fight unless directly threatened. But what the humans taught me is that there are threats worth fighting even when they're not aimed at us. Children being enslaved, civilizations being exterminated, an evil being committed while we file complaints and maintain our precious peace. You're advocating for interventionism, an elder said. For the Vryn to become police of the galaxy. I'm advocating for the Vryn to become something more than survivors. The humans have a phrase. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We've been doing nothing for 8 centuries. Just surviving. Just calculating. Just limiting ourselves. Those limits kept us alive. No, Thesic said quietly. Those limits kept us from living. There's a difference. Elder Cassith made a gesture. The other elders fell silent. She studied Thesic for a long moment. Her membrane pattern was unreadable. If we accept your argument, she said slowly, what do you propose? Thesic had been waiting for this question. He'd spent 3 months preparing for it. Alliance with humanity, full diplomatic relations, technology exchange, joint exploration initiatives. He pulled up proposed treaty frameworks. But more than that, cultural exchange. Let them teach us what we've forgotten. Let us teach them what they haven't learned. Combine Vryn caution with human audacity. That's... An elder stopped. Thought. That's actually brilliant. It's insane, another elder argued. It's both, Thesic agreed. Like everything involving humans. But consider the alternative. We can try to contain them, which will fail and make enemies of the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. We can ignore them, which means missing the opportunity to learn from beings who've achieved in decades what took us centuries. Or we can embrace them, guide them, or learn from them. And if they're as dangerous as you suggest, then we'll be close enough to moderate their impact, and strong enough, having learned from them, to survive whatever comes next. Cassith's membrane rippled. You've thought about this extensively. I've had 3 months in quantum lock while you debated my fate. I had time. That got a ripple of amusement from several elders. Good. Humor was good. The vote, Cassith announced. Commander Thesic has presented his argument, on his fate and on his proposal. We will address both. The elders conferred in silent communication. Membrane patterns shifted. Consensus formed. Finally, Cassith spoke. Commander Thesic, by vote of 17 to 6, you are found guilty of violating the Accords. Your command is revoked. You will be placed on inactive status pending further review. Thesic felt his membrane flatten. Expected. Deserved even. However, Cassith continued, and her membrane pattern shifted to something like amusement. By vote of 19 to 4, we accept your proposal. The Vrin will establish formal relations with humanity. Technology exchange, cultural programs, joint initiatives. Thesic's tertiary heart stopped. And by vote of 20 to 3, we are reforming the Accords. New protocols will be established for intervention in genocide scenarios. The Vrin will no longer stand idle while innocents are slaughtered, provided appropriate risk assessment indicates acceptable probability of success. That's revolutionary. Yes, as is your assignment. Cassith's membrane definitely showed amusement now. You will serve as the first Vrin ambassador to humanity. Your command is indeed revoked. Your new title is Ambassador Thesic, representative of the Vrin people to the human civilization. Thesic stood frozen. His consciousness couldn't quite process what he was hearing. You're sending me to Earth? You understand them. They trust you. And frankly, Commander, Ambassador Thesic, we need someone who can think like a human, because they certainly don't think like us. Cassith gestured at the other elders. Consider it a punishment, if you like. Spending years among beings who drive you to tertiary heart palpitations with their complete disregard for safety protocols. Or consider it an opportunity. Your choice. Thesic felt his membrane ripple with something that might have been joy. When do I leave? Immediately. There's a human delegation waiting in orbit. They've been quite insistent about meeting you. Something about wanting to thank the alien who grew a spine. Cassith's membrane showed disapproval. Their words, not mine. Apparently, humans are shockingly informal in diplomatic communications. Yes, Thesic said. Yes, they are. He turned to leave, then stopped. Elder Cassith, the humans will exceed every expectation you have. They'll break protocols you haven't written yet. They'll terrify you and inspire you in equal measure. I'm aware. Are you ready for that? Cassith's membrane rippled. Ask me in a few centuries, if they haven't burned down the galaxy or saved it by then. The human delegation met Thesic in orbit aboard a station they'd built in the 3 months since first contact. It was primitive by Vrin standards, and elegant by human ones. All function with just enough form to avoid being ugly. Very human. Sarah Chen met him at the airlock. She'd been promoted, Admiral Chen now, leader of the newly formed Earth Space Defense Force. Behind her stood Marcus Webb, also promoted to general. Behind them, representatives from every major human nation. They all wore expressions that suggested barely contained excitement. Ambassador Thesic. Sarah stepped forward, offering her hand in the human greeting gesture. Welcome to Unity Station, named for the day your fleet stood with humanity against extinction. Thesic extended a manipulation tendril, grasped her hand. The honor is mine, Admiral Chen, though I note you've been busy since we last met. 3 months is a long time in human terms. Sarah gestured at the station around them. We've built 12 of these, started construction on ships using hybrid human-Vrin technology, established formal governments for space operations. Oh, and we've identified 23 systems within 50 light-years that are candidates for colonization. 23. Thesic's membrane rippled. You're already planning interstellar expansion? Planning? We're building colony ships. First one launches in 2 years. Sarah's smile was pure human audacity. Ambassador, you opened the door to the galaxy. We're not going to stand on the threshold waiting for an invitation. Your species truly doesn't understand limits. Nope. Marcus stepped forward. And thanks to you, we don't have to learn the hard way that the galaxy has teeth. You gave us context, warning, knowledge. And now we're going to use it. A human politician stepped forward. Ambassador Rodriguez, Thessic's briefing had said, United Nations Secretary General. Ambassador Thessic, on behalf of all humanity, I want to thank you for what you did. You and your fleet. You didn't have to fight. You could have left us to die. Instead, you stood between us and extinction. Rodriguez's voice carried genuine emotion. We won't forget that. Ever. You would have done the same, Thessic said. Yes, Sarah agreed. But we're primitive, reckless idiots according to most of the galaxy. You're an advanced civilization with 800 years of peaceful expansion. And you threw that away to save strangers. She stepped closer. That makes you heroes, Ambassador. All of you. Thessic felt his membrane ripple with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe? Or validation. We learned from you, he said quietly. You taught us that some things are worth fighting for, that limits are meant to be tested, that survival without purpose is just existing. And you taught us that humans aren't alone anymore, Rodriguez said, that there are other species out there, some hostile, some friendly, some willing to stand beside us when it matters. He extended his hand. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. Your quarters are ready. Your staff is assembled. And we have about 6,000 questions about galactic politics, trade agreements, and whether you can help us figure out how to make atmospheric gel, because that stuff is amazing. Thessic grasped the offered hand. I will do my best to answer them. Though I should warn you, humans have a tendency to exceed every prediction I make. We'll try to keep it to 300% this time, Sarah said with a grin. Just for you. They moved through the station, human and Vryn, former strangers, now allies. Around them, more humans worked on projects that would have taken the Vryn decades to attempt. Research labs studying Vryn technology, engineering bays designing hybrid ships, training centers preparing crews for deep space missions. All of it happening at human speed, which was to say, faster than should be possible. Ambassador, Sarah said as they reached his quarters, I have a question. Off the record. Ask. Do you regret it? Throwing away your command? Violating your accords? Risking everything to save us? Thessic thought about 800 years of Vryn caution. About limits and protocols and survival through careful calculation. About 3 months of knowing humans and learning to live rather than just exist. Not even for a moment, he said. Sarah's smile turned warm. Good answer. She left him there, in quarters designed to accommodate Vryn physiology, but decorated with human touches. Artwork on the walls. A viewport showing Earth below. A data pad with messages from crew members thanking him. Thessic floated in the atmospheric gel, looking at that blue planet spinning below, and felt his tertiary heart steady with something like peace. The humans were going to change the galaxy. They'd explore everywhere, push every boundary, exceed every limit, and the Vryn would be there beside them, learning, teaching, growing. Maybe that's what civilization was supposed to be. Not safe, not limited, not comfortable, but alive. 6 months later, the first joint human-Vryn expedition launched toward Proxima Centauri. 2 ships, 1 human, 1 Vryn. 60 crew members total. Sarah Chen commanded the human vessel. Thessic served as cultural liaison aboard the Vryn ship. As they prepared to engage quantum drives and leave Sol System behind, Sarah transmitted to the Vryn vessel. Commander Thessic, force of habit, you ready for this? Admiral Chen, I've learned that ready is a relative term when dealing with humans. But yes, I am as prepared as one can be for whatever chaos you're about to unleash on the galaxy. Her laughter came through clear. That's the spirit. See you at Proxima. See you there. The drives engaged. 2 ships slipped into quantum space, carrying the combined hopes of 2 civilizations into the unknown. Behind them, Earth hung in the dark. Protected now, part of something larger. Ahead, the galaxy waited, full of limits the humans didn't understand, full of possibilities the Vryn were learning to embrace. Together. 15 years later, the Galactic Council assembled for the first time in its 1,000-year history, with full representation from 64 civilizations. They gathered to discuss a single question: what to do about the humans? In 15 years, humanity had established colonies in 18 systems, built ships using technology that shouldn't exist for centuries, formed alliances with 7 civilizations, provoked conflict with 3 aggressive species who'd learned the hard way that humans don't back down, and changed every species they encountered. The Vryn had become explorers again, bold, willing to take risks. The timid Solix had established their first extrasolar colony after centuries of homeworld isolation. The aggressive Krell had actually sued for peace after humans destroyed 2 more of their fleets and then offered to help them rebuild. Everywhere humans went, limits dissolved. Elder Cassith, now representing the Vryn on the Galactic Council, stood before the assembly. "We called this meeting to discuss the human problem," she began. "In 15 years, they have disrupted 8 centuries of established galactic order. They don't follow our protocols. They don't respect our boundaries. They collaborate with species we've isolated. They fight species we've negotiated with. They refuse to accept the limits we've established." She paused. Every representative waited. "And because of them," Cassith continued, "you see, galactic exploration has increased 40%. New technologies have emerged. Previously stagnant civilizations have begun expanding again. Wars we thought inevitable have been prevented through what humans call crazy plans that somehow work." She made the Vryn gesture for profound conclusion. "The human problem, representatives, is that they're forcing us all to be better than we thought we could be. They're teaching us what we forgot, that the galaxy is not something to be managed, it's something to be explored, experienced, lived." She let that sink in. The question before this council is simple. Do we contain them, which will fail and make enemies of a species that's proven they fight harder when cornered? Do we exile them, which will simply mean they'll spread beyond our ability to track? Or do we embrace them, just learn from them, and see where their impossible audacity takes us all? The vote took 3 hours. In the end, 61 civilizations voted to welcome humanity fully into the galactic community. 3 abstained. None voted for containment. Because by then, every species in the galaxy had learned what the Vryn learned first. Humans didn't understand limits. And that was the most dangerous, inspiring, extraordinary thing the galaxy had ever encountered. The meeting adjourned. Representatives scattered back to their homeworlds, and somewhere on the frontier, a human ship received a distress signal from an unknown species facing extinction. The crew didn't hesitate. They didn't calculate odds. They didn't check if rescue was within acceptable parameters. They just went. Because that's what humans did. That's what they'd always done. That's what they'd taught the galaxy to do. No limits, no boundaries, no impossible. Just the question, why not? And the answer, always and forever. Because we're human. And that was enough.